Thank you. Thank you, Chair Quilisi, and thank you so much to the commission for all your hard work and dedication. And I know how much work it takes. So really grateful for that, for your, and thank you also to Judy and Jeff for stepping up and being of service. So welcome. Thank you, staff, Sherry, Lucas, Maura, and Epi for all your hard work. And really looking forward to the 17th to hear about the Adamson property. And thank you, Glenn, for doing your homework. And thanks to Mark Whitman and Jeremy also on the Adamson property, Tony Yano, and just sounds really exciting. In terms of the themes, agrarian, adaptive reuse, local produce, great community resource, keeping with the rural character, fermentation room for kombucha. I mean, come on. That it's been 20 years vacant and we're getting a move on. So, and I really appreciate the neighbors, the community concerns. So addressing noise and light and the sight lines and how we here in Ojai work all together to come up with the perfect, collaborate for the best solution for all of us. So I just am really grateful and thankful to all of you. So thank you.
Thank you for the kind words, Mayor. All right, item 3 on the agenda, lot line adjustment at 214 Bryant Street. Maura?
Thank you, Chair Quilisi and Commissioners. This is a request for an adjustment of an existing property line that divides two existing legal conforming lots located at 214 Bryant Street. Per the Ojai Municipal Code, lot line adjustments that exceed 10% of an increase or decrease in area of any affected parcel are to be reviewed and considered by the Planning Commission. Under that amount, they can be reviewed and considered by the director. The parcels are currently irregular, and these parcels are, more than 10% will be affected. The parcels are currently irregularly shaped, and parcel A is nearly twice the size of parcel B. Also, the parcel line currently runs through a structure which is prohibited. The proposed lot line adjustment will result in two relatively square parcels that are more similar in size and will correct the situation where the lot line runs through a structure. The current request will reduce parcel A by approximately 57% and increase parcel B by approximately 185%. I want to note that there is needs to be a correction in the resolution, a revision so that the representative is identified as Jeremy Henry. I think right now it's Glenn Adamson. And also there was, I'll just bring it up now before you start talking about it, a question about underground tanks. The report identifies that there were 2 tanks that were removed, and there's an attachment from the county in here, in your packet. And what was brought up prior to the meeting was that there were potentially more sites that were not identified with the county contact a while ago when I made contact with them. So staff was initially recommending approval of this request. I'm going to just put this forward and let the commission take over and discuss it. If there's any questions of me, and I think we have the applicant here.
Any questions for
Adamson?
clarification from staff? We're going to try to hold it to questions this time and not discuss our opinions before the deliberation time.
Also, Commissioner, I do not believe we have an applicant here.
Well, how can we proceed?
Is either Mr. Adamson or Mr. Henry here?
I don't think we can proceed under that circumstance.
I don't think so. I've got questions.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Well,
We have questions.
but there's
Yeah.
certainly going to be questions that the staff's not going to be able to answer.
Right.
I would move we continue this if we don't.
I think that's the solution, but at this point, it would have to be to a date uncertain because we don't have anyone to ask, when can you be here to answer questions?
I agree.
Could you just give me my response to my questions in writing then? Or should I ask them? The
Well,
ones I
if we're
wrote to you.
Yeah, I mean, we're continuing it.
If we're continuing
Just
it,
wait on the
we'll
table
wait on
right
the
now,
questions
yeah.
till,
Okay, okay.
till the next appropriate time. So, what do you think? Continue to a date uncertain?
Yes.
That's,
Motion?
that's
I'll
unfortunate
move
because,
to continue to
yeah,
do a date
the
uncertain.
city will have to re-notify people in the area,
I'll move for that.
okay?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Murphy. Any discussion?
They had all the information.
Good with that.
Sherry, call the roll, please.
Quillisi,
Yes?
Trent,
Yes.
Murphy. Starkweather.
Yes, sorry. So
Okay.
can I, before we move on, so in the time period, can we get a little more detailed study of the status of those storage tanks?
The storage tanks themselves?
Yeah, and my understanding too is that, this came from someone else, more knowledgeable than me. Normally, reports are required to the State Water Resources Control Board about this sort of thing, as well as the Division of Water Quality about underground storage tanks that have been removed, inspected, enclosure, and performed for the state. So we can get a little more clarity on that issue.
And that was going to be a question for the applicant tonight, to provide some of that
Yeah.
additional
But
information.
I would
Now-
like the staff to actually investigate that.
Right. And
If
we,
you could.
look, I don't necessarily want to get into the details of it, but the information that was provided with in the report tonight, staff felt it was satisfying that requirement, but there's been additional information that's come forward, and that's now barring several more questions that need to
Okay,
be answered.
appreciate
The
that.
submission is now deemed incomplete, I think, by staff.
Additional information is warranted.
And clearly, one of the questions is if there are other tanks on site,
Yeah. Well,
where
were
are
listed,
they and
yeah.
what condition are they in?
Yeah.
We don't know at this point, and we don't have anyone here to answer the question.
Right. Since it's been continued, I don't necessarily want to
Yeah.
dive into more.
We'll
Yeah, that's
continue
fine,
this
yeah.
to, if staff can contact the applicant, find out when they can be here to answer questions,
Yep.
then,
And to Starkweather's point, if there are additional questions and you want to send those to staff directly to do additional analysis, we could certainly do that within the realm of the lot line adjustment itself and the parameters within that.
Well, you'll have more time to, because I just gave them to this morning.
Yeah, you
This
did give them
afternoon.
to me this
but,
morning, so
you know,
yes.
It took a while to read all this stuff and look things up, so.
okay, thank you. Murphy?
While you're doing a little more investigating, could you also check to see if this addition of the back building has a certificate of occupation?
Occupancy.
And could you also check to see whether the fire extinguisher line has been connected?
Yes, we can look into both of those.
Okay, thank you.
Keeping in mind, there are more extensive rules put out by the Ventura County Fire Protection District than have been adopted by the city council.
Apparently, the fire department did sign off on this particular item. However, it was never completed, so
Okay.
there's a problem there,
Well,
which
if
I
there's-
can
yeah,
document for you if you would like.
Can we
That'll be
also
helpful to staff, I'm
see
sure.
whether or not any environmental evaluation of this site? Because it seems like.
In terms of a phase one or
obvious-
something to that
seems
degree.
like an obvious potential
Now-
toxic site, given all the
right.
trucks and stuff that have been there.
I don't want to, because we've already continued the item, so
Okay.
I don't want
But
to
if we
dive
can
any.
research that
Yeah,
more.
Yes.
If you have
Thank
more
you.
questions for staff, let's send them to staff,
Right, I think staff
and
is,
we'll go on.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Chairman, point of order. I had people that came here to speak, and just because the applicant nor his representative didn't show up, I really don't feel the people that came here to speak on this item should be denied that opportunity. They may not be available. When the applicant gets around to getting down here, because after all, they're the one that got it scheduled the agenda.
I don't think we should.
Epi, what's the
I mean, we would have to open up.
what's the right thing to do here?
I think it's up to the chair and the commission. There's no,
Back at you, he said.
Something along those lines. If the commission did decide to go that route, they would have to reopen with a motion to allow for public comment on the issue.
Okay. And I don't have any cards from anyone that said they want to speak. That's what kind of
it's,
surprised me.
I have some concern about somebody speaking with not having had the questions from us that could enlighten them and your answers to them, as well having, complete report.
That's normally what we do
And
before
also
there is public comment.
Having the applicant, give a presentation and us asking them questions. So they're not really, they're going to give public input without all the complete information. So I think it would be better not to do it at this point, is my opinion. I mean, it's inconvenient, but
Well-
I think for their own sake, their public input would be more effective and precise and so forth, that they were responding to the questions we asked, reports you made, and the applicant's answers to those questions. That's just my feeling.
Well, we would need a motion to reopen public comment on an item that we've continued. Is there a motion to that effect on the floor?
I move to reopen.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
No
For
second.
purposes of discussion, I'll second it. Any discussion necessary? Let's call a roll on a motion to reopen public comment on item 3.
Quillisi,
No.
Trent,
No.
Murphy,
Yes.
Starkweather.
No.
Okay. I'm sorry, folks, but we'll have context for you the next time, or whenever that is. It may be the next meeting, it may be after that. I'm sorry. I really expected we'd have an applicant here to present a case and be able to give you some context for the case.
Also, if I may add, that when we come back the next time, Lucas and staff will have been able to answer those questions. They may be part of the administrative report, which the neighbors would get in advance, so they'd have, again, more knowledge in which
Yeah.
to raise questions.
Yep.
That's my view, anyway.
Okay.
Wait, hold on a second.
Then it's over.
Okay.
Hold on, the applicant is on virtually?
I think we're done.
I think we finished it. We finished it.
Yeah, I think we should go on,
Well,
since we have other questions anyway.
Mr. City Attorney, what do you think?
This is completely the prerogative of the the chair and the planning commission.
Well, if we have an applicant, I can see an argument for continuing to prosecute the case.
Continuing now, you mean?
Continuing now. If we have an applicant, then we can ask questions of staff, then we can hear from the applicant. We actually asked questions of the staff already. Some of them, I think, will have to be answered by the applicant.
Possibly.
And I recognize that the commission is starting to transition to the next item, but hearing and seeing that the applicant is here virtually?
Yeah.
Who is here virtually?
If
Sherry?
we have an applicant, we should have a case, I think.
Okay.
Does this
Yes.
take a ruling from the chair, or do we have to have another motion?
I think we have
Yeah,
a
it'd
motion.
be another
Another
motion.
motion is appropriate here.
Okay,
I move to reopen
reopen the case.
the case.
Okay,
Second.
all right. Sherry?
Second that.
Quillisi,
Yes.
Trent,
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes.
Starkweather.
Yes.
Okay, let's hear from the applicant. Mr. Henry?
Yes.
I don't think I got my questions answered yet.
Oh, hold on just a moment.
But I can do them during deliberation, too, if you want. Doesn't matter.
We can have discussion.
Questions
Okay.
first, I would
Questions are
recommend that.
appropriate at this point to clarify.
Okay, so you
the
don't
staff
have an
report.
answer about the underground storage tanks?
No, but we have an applicant here who may be
Yes,
able to
that's
answer
true.
that.
I had a question about,
Excuse me, Commissioner Starkweather. I would suggest repeating the questions in case the applicant didn't hear them the first time.
Right.
That would just make everything
Okay,
So the record is clear.
okay, I'll repeat them. I'll turn them over to there so I can put them in the record. The first one was, you wrote on page, this is DeLucas, one of your administrative report on this item that the Environmental Health Division records indicated that underground storage tanks on the site had been removed in 1998. Exhibit C indicates that two 2,000-gallon underground storage tanks were removed. However, in the attached 2019 EDR radius report of GeoCheck on page 9 and 10 of the main report, not the summary, the Adamson's Automotive and Towing appears to have 9 storage tanks.
I thought that report actually showed 6.
Excuse me, 6.
Right. So that was a
Get
report
on
that you
upside
provided
down.
earlier today. The information that I had been provided and staff in doing our research and due diligence showed 2 had been removed, but didn't identify whether or not there were any additional sites. However, your report is showing now that there are 6. Now the question then
Not my
is,
report.
well, the report that you provided to staff today. The question then, from staff standpoint, is it 6 minus the 2 from 98, or is it 6 in addition to the 2? There's too many questions that have been raised by this one report that has since surfaced. So
I don't recall
staff
the
doesn't
date
necessarily
on
have an
the
answer to that. It would require some due diligence on staff standpoint. However, the applicant is here and available, and I would also punt that to the applicant to respond to that, to see if they have any additional information and clarification.
The next question was, this site appears to have been a truck and major equipment storage site for some period. Those type of vehicle sites often experience hazardous waste seeping into the soil. It appears from the real estate sign that the owner is marketing this property for sale. Do we had any environmental hazardous soil analysis of this property?
Now, for a lot line adjustment, I can't necessarily require that as a condition or something to move the project forward. However, if there's a project that's proposed, then yes, we can require those technical documents.
So my next question goes right to that question. Although minor alterations in land limitations, a minor lot line adjustment would normally be a categorical exception. Should this apply in this type of circumstance where there's clearly a possibility of having contaminated soil due to this extended use of large equipment vehicles stored and the landowner is marketing? Wouldn't prudence call for a CUPA review of the newly created lot before we approve this request? Would section 15302A of CUPA come into play here, since this is a case clearly where, and this is a quote from that section, a project that is ordinarily insignificant in its impact on the environment may, in a particular sensitive environment, be significant. It seems to me that that section potentially could apply, and that the categorical exception may not be automatically used.
Okay, so it's a good wholesome question, I believe. In terms of how categorical exemptions work, specifically for a lot line adjustment, we're talking about a line that's being adjusted. A line that's being adjusted over an existing building onto a separate site. Now, whether or not there's contamination on that site has yet to be identified. However, because it is a movement of a line and not necessarily a development project that's coming forward as a proposal, those technical documents are not required in this case. However, I have seen in past examples of projects where a lot line adjustment is accompanied with a project. And in those cases, absolutely, there's technical documents that are absolutely required. Phase 1s, phase 2s are examples of that to address some of the questions and concerns that you've raised.
So let me add one other little fact, because I'm raising the question whether this is really a minor adjustment. I noticed that Lot A is decreasing by 58%, and Lot B is increasing by 114%.
85, yeah.
This seems to me raise question whether this really is a minor alteration in land use limitations.
I think the difference between that would be is if you were creating a lot. That would then take it out of the category of a minor and move into the category of a parcel map, essentially, which is major. That then we have a process through our code, through Chapter 3, Title 10, that provides the parameters for us to review. Here we're talking about not an increase in the number of lots. The number of lots remain the same. It's adjusting an existing line.
One final one. This is a non-conforming use. And normally in this zone, if it came before us, it would require a conditional use permit. But this was non-conforming beforehand. If it had a conditional use permit, I would assume they would have to go through the conditional use permit process to do something like this. Given that it's non-conforming, it doesn't have a conditional use permit, shouldn't we be applying that same standard?
So the non-conforming section of our code, it's a good question. I think it's a valid one too from a use standpoint. Non-conforming section of our code talks about any non-conforming uses that are being expanded. So for instance, if the use itself was being expanded, these non-conforming uses, the building was expanded, well, I guess it would probably be the buildings that were being expanded, we would be looking at a CUP. That is the appropriate measure that's identified within our code currently. Here, we're once again only talking about the lot line itself being adjusted and not a use itself being altered in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, thank you.
I'm good.
Commissioner Trent, any questions for staff?
I would like to, the tank situation, I would like to have the applicant respond to that because that's not
Absolutely.
something I have a response to.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, before we do that, just a quick question. Did staff look at any other reports outside of the one that's provided in the documentation for the tanks?
Aside from the report that was provided with the staff report as a part of for the commission tonight, there was a report that was provided that's been forwarded to the rest of the commission.
Right.
that is calling to question
Right.
the additional tanks on site and whether or not those have since been alleviated. And at this point, with a document like that, there's additional research that would need to be done to clarify that.
No, I get it. My question is, before that report was made available, did staff look at any additional reports outside of the one that was provided in the material? Or
Sorry, you kind of tailed off there, Trent. Commissioner,
sorry.
Can you say it again?
Did staff look at any other reports outside of the one that was provided in the administrative report before you got the report from Jeffrey?
No.
Okay,
No.
so you just looked at one.
Just looked at one, the one that was provided by Environmental Health. Correct.
Okay, that was my question. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Then let's hear from the applicant. Mr. Henry,
Yes, hello.
please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, with the underground storage tank, I don't have any, all I have is the same report that you guys have. I don't have any other comments on that, as that didn't have to do with the lot line adjustment.
Which report is that? The one saying two tanks were removed?
Yeah, the one that Sherry sent in the email for this, that's the first time I've seen it, because land surveying doesn't deal with underground storage tanks. That's a separate task.
Yeah.
But we were just dealing with, our purpose was to clean up the lot line because it currently goes through the existing building. So we wanted to clean up, make everything square. And so we'd be conforming again for the
More conforming, at least, yes.
more conforming. Correct.
Chair Quillisi, I believe the applicant is here as well. The property owner's here, Mr. Adamson's.
Mr. Adamson, would you care to address the commission? That's the only place.
To our knowledge, the only tanks that are on that property before were the ones for fuel and diesel that we used to use for the trucks. These storage tanks that keep coming up that are underground, my parents bought that property in '75 from Gallup Construction. And To our knowledge, there was nothing said then, and even today, we have no idea about any underground tanks whatsoever. And as far as heavy equipment and stuff being stored out there in that property, there hasn't been since we've been there. It's just been our equipment, the tow trucks and whatnot, but nothing down there. It's been mainly like RVs and things like that that don't leak fluids like that. So I don't know anything further about the lower part that, other than it's clean to my knowledge. We did have the phase 1 done, you know, but I think we're going for phase 2 after this. So
Phase 1 of what?
that part of that section of that land.
The land survey, or, okay,
By who?
is that by Mr. Henry, you mean?
No, and I don't have the name in front of me. I didn't come equipped with that name, I'm sorry. I can get it to you, but I don't know the name.
When you say phase 1, this was the part of the land before you did,
Right.
before you presented the lot line adjustment.
Correct.
What was the original?
Yeah,
And so someone was evaluating it for what purpose?
to buy it before.
Buy it. So they did their own evaluation.
Right.
Oh.
But you haven't presented it to us.
I have it this evening. I have it, I can bring it.
You have a
sure.
copy of it?
Yeah.
I would like to see it.
Yeah, I can bring it, but it'll have to be tomorrow, of course, you know? But
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
we
have,
have
I have questions as well. If there are in fact additional tanks on the land, I'd like to know where they are. We
would we.
haven't, well, that's good. We're on the same side in this then, for sure. It's clear that a lot line that bisects an existing building needs to be fixed. If the proposed lot line turns out to be bisecting a tank that none of us have seen or know particularly about, I think that's a potential problem as well, because if there's anything toxic there, then it could be a problem for two different landowners. And so my question, and I guess you've probably seen this radius map report now. If not, we can make a copy available to you.
That would be good.
It says at some point, and I don't remember the date on that report.
It's 2019, so it wasn't that long ago.
Okay.
It was 18 or 19.
Well,
And they,
yeah, okay, that's 20 years after the first two tanks were removed.
That's
So-
true.
So if that report is true from 2.5, 3 years ago, there may be as many as 6 additional tanks on the property. And I think we'd like to know what the situation is with those before we decide on a final division of the property, just so that there are no problems.
The county has record that there's 6 more tanks on that property, is that the deal?
This is from this organization called EDU. It is, where's the name of it? This was done on, let's see, sorry, I don't know who commissioned this, but Environmental Data Resources. It seems
EDR,
like
yeah.
they use like
They use several.
GIS kind of stuff. So they didn't actually
Well-
find them, but they were somehow, they had the
They
ability.
were on somebody's map. GIS doesn't show you stuff.
Whatever geocode
It
is.
just gives you geolocations for
Maybe they had
things.
a way of finding
You
where
specify
They
that.
used several state reports.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Is there a slight chance our property could be mixed up with one next door?
No, it's got your address. It's called Adamson's Automotive. Well, you can check with them, actually.
Right.
We'll give you that report. And there were some other, there's sort of a history of them inspecting this property, too, and finding some hazardous or toxic materials at different times,
well,
but it's sometime back.
spilled automotive
Spills.
fluids could be
Yes,
called that, sure.
Yes.
That you find around a garage.
They mentioned one of these tanks. Most of the tanks they have listed, they don't say what they are, but one of them was diesel, I see. And,
So
They're
this may be
either
something
diesel
that
or unleaded.
predates your ownership of the property. We don't know.
yeah.
That's the
yeah.
problem. We don't know.
Yeah, and the tanks that I'm talking about that were removed are clear up towards the shop itself.
Yeah, yeah.
These
Yeah.
that they're talking
So
about.
the
are
question
somewhere-
really is, the lower piece of the property,
Well, they
And-
don't separate in their report your two pieces of property. It's all one report, so I have
it's
no
all
way of
one
knowing.
address.
I
Yeah,
have
it's
no
all
way of
one
knowing
address.
What that would be.
Okay.
The other question I had is that, so you had someone that wanted to buy it at one point, and they did a survey.
Right.
And you have potentially another buyer that is Trying to do a survey? Okay.
Yeah.
And what is the,
That's certainly what a prudent
can I
buyer
ask
would
this
do.
question? What is the intended use, since this is a C1 and
What
a
they
It's
M1.
M1.
M1 zone?
Commissioner Starkweather,
I can't ask
I
that?
caution against asking
Okay,
it.
okay, fine, huh?
'Cause I-
Not
be
exactly
correct.
relevant to the issues
If
tonight.
it becomes a subject of a project,
Okay,
then we'll
that's
see
fine.
it again.
because I
Don't
can't
answer
really
it
say-
then.
I can't really say that one.
Don't answer it.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not going to, thank you.
But you can give us that other report, I hope.
Pardon?
You can submit the previous, is that okay?
Yeah, so it sounds like you've done a phase 1,
We have.
and you're looking to do a phase 2?
Right, that's what we were talking about.
Yeah, so staff will be asking for that information as a part of the lot line
Part
adjustment.
of when this
You
comes
don't have
back.
copies of the phase 1?
No,
Okay, you'd like that, right?
yes.
Okay, no problem. Okay. All right.
Um,
Anything else I need to bring to school?
I don't know.
Is there?
Pencil and eraser?
Is there an estimate by, it looks to me like the land survey portion of this is done
Right.
unless we find a problem with the proposed lot line. So is there, do you want to speculate on a time when we might actually do this again? Or continue this to a date uncertain and figure out when you can?
Well, we'd like to move forward as quickly as we can.
Of course,
Yeah.
yes. If you have a phase 1 already that you can submit to staff, that would be helpful. If
Okay.
you are doing a phase 2, I'm not sure what the differences are there.
Right.
Or what they're looking for in a phase 2, but I think those findings would also be helpful to staff to present the case to us.
And I'd like to give staff enough time to actually
Sure,
research these
course.
various state agencies.
And we'll make
so
sure
forth.
that you get a copy of the report that we have seen
Right.
I didn't
outside of
understand
the
half
packet. Yeah.
Well, that
Yeah, I mean, the appropriate measure would probably be either the first or second meeting in August.
Okay. Do you have you have a preference there? We're talking about the 3rd of August or the 17th, I think.
Let's try for the 3rd.
Okay?
Well, it's not a trying. We would be doing it date specific with all that information
That's-
being
that's okay. Let's
provided
do
by
the 3rd,
then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It didn't sound like the Phase 1 showed additional tanks, just from what I've heard in the meeting tonight. So
I
if
didn't
it
hear
doesn't
either
have,
way on
if it
that,
doesn't
yeah.
have the information that you want, then we may want to have the applicant get the Phase 2, if indeed that's something that's going to show the tanks. If the tank locations aren't available, then you're not going to have the information that you're asking for.
Yeah. I
Right.
mean, typically a phase 2 goes into a deeper dive. It does soil testing.
Does a phase 2, it does soil samples, but does it do ground penetrating radar or something?
No, I don't think it goes that far. I think what it really boils down to is Mr. Adamson reaching out to the company that produced this document and kind of unwinding where that information's coming from. If there's 6 tanks on site, or were there 8 tanks on site, and it's been reduced to 6.
Six here,
It
but
says 6
whether
here,
there were
but this
8 at
is,
some point.
this is 15 years after, 20 years after.
And also the
Approval
importance of the
so-
location. Here, just saying 6 tanks doesn't really give us a whole lot of
Yeah,
information
that's
to
true.
go off
We
of,
don't
so-
know.
Wouldn't the
There's-
county have a map of where those tanks are?
Well,
We
that
have
was the
reached out
question.
to Environmental Health, and they've provided us with a study showing 2 that were removed in '98,
Right.
and that's a part of this report tonight.
Yeah. That's the only ones that I am aware of. Those
Okay.
2 we talked about.
But I do think you need to do your due diligence because I have a conflicting report identifying 6 tanks, and that needs to be verified.
Yeah.
And we can't move forward without having that detailed information.
We'd like to
And
know
clarification.
ourselves. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
It keeps coming up, and I don't understand.
I would be more comfortable if we could get the phase 2 report before we had to vote on it.
I don't know.
I don't
what's-
know that we
what's in
can-
a phase- What's in a phase 2
The,
report?
well, I don't want to go into details on the phase 2, but it typically goes into, rather than just the surface and the research and the history of the site, it goes into soil samples and gives more technical information than what you would typically see with a phase 1.
Okay. So.
The one thing I
everybody's-
would say that, I agree with that, the phase 2 is not going to show the tank location.
That's true, but it might show something else.
Yeah.
Don't know. Okay, is everybody happy with August 3rd?
Hold on. Is August 3rd enough time for you? Because that's giving you roughly less than a month. So that would then,
Yeah.
That would then require us to have the information back to staff to review. I don't have a calendar in front of me, but
Days
it
in
would be at
advance.
least 2 weeks prior to that meeting. So you've got literally less than 2 weeks, probably 10 days to do this.
The option was the 17th?
Yeah, I would probably opt for the 17th
I
for
think
you, just to make sure that
We have a
you've got
calendar
enough
here. I think it's
information.
the 3rd and the 17th.
Yeah, double check that.
3rd and the 17th, yes.
Yep.
We'll do the
The
17th.
17th is probably more reasonable for you to do your due diligence. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so it would be appropriate then to have a motion to continue this case to the
We have
17th of
public-
August.
Don't we have public input?
Yeah, we do need to open up for
That
public.
is true, yes. We have
comment.
2 speakers for this. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, appreciate your
Thank
being.
you, gentlemen, ladies, thank you.
All right, I have 2 cards from people, I'm sorry. We'll open the public hearing. I have 2 cards for people that wish to speak on this case. First up, William Ulrich.
William Ulrich, 487 Gridley Road. The city in general and the Community Development Department in particular has an execrable history of enforcement, follow-up to conditions of approval. And I think any of your determinations and your deliberations should factor that in, because it seems you're being directed into a very narrow consideration, or very narrow deliberation, as in this is just about a parcel, a property line adjustment. Yet it isn't, because, as you've asserted, in the event you approve it and the new line either falls, as you'd indicated, Chair, across an unknown location for a tank, an underground tank, or worse still, it winds up transferring all of the tanks, even if it's just one or more tanks, to the other property that from where it is presently, where they are presently. I'd also like to point out that the report that was part of the packet, unless there was more available to the public, isn't a report. It's, at least it's not a report of from Ventura County Environmental Health. It's just a letter from the abatement company saying we pulled 2 tanks and processed them. There isn't even a stamp on it on that document that says Ventura County Environmental Health that I could see. So as a consequence, that's not a Ventura County record. That's not, it's not comprehensive, and nor is it probative. In addition, the Planning Commission, in approving this lot line adjustment, may be transferring liabilities, issues, contamination, et cetera, to a completely different lot. I would submit that, once again, if you're narrowed into having to approve this, that you approve it with conditions. And those conditions are that the applicant obtains the CUP that they apparently never had, that the applicant obtains a certificate of occupancy and a final inspection from the city, which they've never had. And stepping back for just a moment, the project that apparently, according to the CDD director, doesn't exist, does exist. There was an addition to the existing building. It's never been finalized. Applicant to provide proof of abatement of all underground storage tanks per California State database, as well as Ventura County environmental health violations. There may be those. And the applicant to complete a fire sprinkler system, including plan check, permit, and final operational inspection and approval. That's a requirement for a commercial building. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Lucas taking copious notes. Next up, Bob Daddy.
Well, hey, thank you, everybody. I think this thing has progressed down to where I wanted to get as the director for the community facility director for Ojai Water Groundwater Basin. I wanted to make sure that we, as one of the very, very, very few communities that do not have state water, make sure that we do everything we can to protect our groundwater
If we pollute the groundwater, we have no backup, we have no reserve, we have zero. And we have gone through this, and I've gone through a number of large claims in this community with the LUF fund. That is the Underground Leftover Fuel Tank Fund, where we've had to have people had problems, extensive problems, and had to have them mitigated. So my purpose was, and I see that we're going to go with the phase one, which didn't know anything about, phase two, which I didn't read any literature. And if we're going to go ahead and go through these things and determine where they are, let's determine where they are. This report you have, I'm really not familiar with the people that put this thing out. I'm not really familiar how accurate they are. I'm not really familiar how they go around to determine anything. I'm not sure if they didn't do a 1935 flyover and see 5 or 6 tanks sitting on the ground and they geolocated them and said, okay, they were there. But I was there across the way at the railroad station when that tank was actually hauled up out of the ground and got to see the weepage, leakage, and seepage and the material for the spread of dirt. I was there at Garvey's property, which is now the yoga place on the corner of Ojai Avenue and Bryant Street, and have looked at a number of these tanks. The tanks we had at the Chevron station, the tanks that we've had in town with a half a dozen other places. And this is pretty critical for us. And we have a very high groundwater, and we have perched water, which means we get a huge, quick migration. And that's why we have testing from where the mob shop was before that station. And that's why we have different testing areas, because we did have a lot of migration over the years of pollutants, petroleum pollutants, into our water system. So, again, I think you've taken care of that where you're going to ask for these things to be done. And that was my purpose for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else present or in the waiting room who wishes to speak on item 3? All right, then a motion to continue this to August 17th.
Can I just ask Lucas, that all those suggestions that Mr. Ehrlich brought up, can you check those out? I don't know how valid they are, but they would sound like they were interesting.
Yes, absolutely. We'll look into those and include those in the report that comes before this commission in the future. Yes.
So a continuance
I'll move for continuance.
I'll second.
to August 17th.
August 17th.
Any
Yep.
discussion?
Good.
Sherry, let's have our last vote on item 3 tonight.
Quillisi,
Motion to continue. Yes,
Trent,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Starkweather.
Yes.
Thank you.
terrific. Okay. Sorry for the delay, but we'll all feel better when we have answers to these questions.
Appreciate it. One comment, or announcement. I've already sent it out, but on the 25th, the Ojai Democratic Club is inviting an incredible speaker, Shane Phillips. Wrote the book, The Affordable City, and he also does a podcast called UCLA Housing Voice. If you get a chance to hear it, it's been going on for about, I think, 18 months, and I've listened to about 10 of them. And he always puts on someone who's done research on an issue around housing. So this book basically goes through a whole set of policies, probably half of which don't apply to us because we're too small. But anyway, it's useful as a tool to look at, what are all the possibilities. So I'm hoping this will be, once he gives a speech, be like inviting you all to be an open forum.
good.
What, if anything, across the state and across the country, and people that are experts in this sort of thing, what might be something that we could use?
Good idea.
Thank you.
All right. Seeing no other business Mayor Sticks, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Quillisi, and thank you so much to the commission for all your hard work and dedication. And I know how much work it takes, so really grateful for that, for your, and thank you also to Judy and Jeff for stepping up and being of service. So welcome. Thank you, staff, Sherry, Lucas, Maura, and Epi for all your hard work, and really looking forward to the 17th to hear about the Adamson property. And thank you, Glenn, for doing your homework And thanks to Mark Whitman and Jeremy also on the Adamson property, Tony Yano, and just sounds really exciting. The in terms of the themes, agrarian, adaptive reuse, local produce, great community resource, keeping with the rural character, fermentation room for kombucha. I mean, come on. That it's been 20 years vacant and we're getting a move on. So, and I really appreciate the neighbors, the community concerns. So addressing noise and light and the sight lines and how we here in Ojai work all together to come up with the perfect, collaborate for the best solution for all of us. So I just am really grateful and thankful to all of you. So thank you.
Thank you for the kind words, Mayor.
Of course.
All right. There being no other business before the commission at 9:06, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
I remember last